Hello YouTube. Here is a photo presentation style video, and that happened because when I decided to make a video of my restoration, I was already in the middle of restoring the handle, so the only thing I could do is just take photos of the already done parts and the materials that I used to make those parts. So I decided to continue with the photo presentation style and just took the photos during the restoration instead of doing photo and then video and then more photos. So this video is gonna be in photos, but the next restoration videos that I'll post, I'll make sure to just record everything on a camera and I'll have a full video of the restoration done. So let's continue with our video. Here is a blade that I bought off of eBay some time ago, and it was listed as Russian Cossack Caucasian Kinjal, and I just liked how it looked. I liked the intricate engravings, the maker's mark, the fullers, and just overall look of it, so I just went ahead and bought it. When I got it, it was really rusty, so I decided to clean it, and I wouldn't use a sandpaper because then it would take off some of the authenticity and maybe just ruin the engravings. So there is this product called Evapo Rust, and it's really great for removing rust. So I just wanted to remove the rust and not alter the blade in any way because it's an original piece and it's an antique. So I poured some Evapo Rust into a plastic container. Some say it starts working in 10 minutes. In my experience, the longer you leave, better it will be. So I left it there for 2 days, and just want to let you know, make sure to have a container that has a lid. Otherwise, even though it doesn't stink, but the smell is not very pleasant. So this is how it looks like when I cleaned it. Really nice and shiny, and nothing is altered as far as the blade goes. And the blade handle had some kind of adhesive attached to it, so I just scraped it and it was gone. So clear, you can see all the engravings, you can see the maker mark in the form of flower, and it has some letters in it, Arabic, I think, letters and numbers. So I tried to find out how it would look like originally, and I searched the Cossack Russian Dagger Kinjal online, and this is what I got. So I mean, some of them have the fullers that are alike, and some of them have the handle that is alike. But as you can see, this is a totally different weapon. It is double-edged, and it has 1, 2, 3 or more fullers in the middle, and the tip is not curved upwards, even though the handle looks very much alike. So that's why the seller, I think, was confused a little bit. So after this, I searched a curved tip Russian dagger, and this is what I got. This is a babut, as they call it. It's a Russian Cossack artillery kinjal, so to say, and it was issued during World War I. They were making it in Zlatoust, in a factory actually, so it's not really a handmade piece. So this is how it looks like, and the difference is this has 2 fullers in the middle, but this is double edged and you can sharpen it on both sides. So this is not exactly what I'm looking for, because the blade that I bought has only one edge and the other one is thicker, so you can only sharpen one edge. I just went ahead and searched Caucasian curved tip daggers or kinjals, and these ones are a little bit more alike to whatever I was trying to find, even though they're not exactly the same. And then I found this one. So this one is a Anatolian Yataran, so to say. The blade looks like the one that I'm looking for, and it has the fullers, but the handle is a little bit different. Then I searched for Islamic weapons, and this is what I found. This is exactly the one that I'm looking for. I mean, very close. And it has the 2 narrow fullers on top and 1 large fuller underneath, and the handle looks very much like the one that I have, and it had a name. That's the good part. It's Persian Qaddara sword. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. If not, then I'll do more research later on. So Persian Qaddara, and when I searched for Qaddara, I found it. So this is one, and it looks exactly like mine. The handle, the engravings, even the maker's mark being in the same position as the one that I have. Also, the fullers are matching, two narrow fullers on top and one larger one underneath those two, and the tip curved at the end. So this is more, and this one has the fullers that continue after the maker's mark towards the handle, but it's still the same one. It's a very fine example. And this one has the fullers edged, which is surprising because this is a technique used mostly in Caucasus region when they edge the fullers of the kinjals. So I'll come to this later on in the video, but right now I'll show you some more examples. This is another one, and they look really good. Fine examples of Qaddara swords. And you see the maker's mark. It's a little bit different than what is mine, but the others, most of the others have a flower or star-like maker's mark, and this is one of them. And also the maker's mark is always located right before the fullers on one side of the blade, and it kind of resembles a star or a flower. So this is the one that looks like a David star. Mine has 6 points as well, but mine looks like a flower. So this one is an interesting example because this one has an old Persian silver coins as washers for the handle rivets, which is interesting because when I was researching kinjals, I found one kinjal that also had the same kind of handle. This is the Persian coins, the rivet heads, but this is a kinjal, and I suppose this is also made in Persia. So this is another one. This one also has the coins and also has the coins as a washer for the rivet heads, and also has the maker's mark, which looks like a David star. It's a little bit different though, but very closely resembles that one. And it also has the crescent next to it. This weapon was probably used for slashing as well as thrusts. That's why this one has a fortified tip, so it would penetrate the armor, chainmail, or whatever they were wearing at the time. This one has the lion on the scabbard, and this will put this weapon in Persia because this lion is symbol of Persia, and I think even now symbol of Iran, as they call it. This is the lion with the sword, and so it leaves no doubt as to where these weapons were made, which is interesting because when you search online for Persian daggers, this is what you'll get. And this is a typical Persian Islamic dagger, and it has different type of handle than the one that Qaddara has. Qaddara's handle mostly resembles Caucasian handles, and these ones are very typical for Muslim countries, starting from Mughal Empire in India all the way to Afghanistan, Persia, Arabic countries, Turkey. All of them have similar handles and similar blade shapes. And this is another variation of Persian dagger. This has a single edge, and the handle is totally different from Qaddara handle. So I have a theory of why it's like that and how come that Caucasian weapons ended up being used in Persia. So just a little bit of history. Persians started using kinjal or kinjal-like weapons when they first conquered Caucasus, and Persians favored kinjals and kinjal-like weapons because these were far more better weapons with the better fighting abilities, and the center for production was Isfahan, and I think it was the Armenians who introduced these blades to Persians when they were moved to Isfahan from Caucasus. And just to look into that theory, I searched for Armenian single edge weapons, daggers, and this is what I found. The interesting part about this is the handle. The blade looks like the one that I have, it's a little bit different, and it's covered in Armenian script, so I know it's made by an Armenian weaponsmith, but the handle is a mix between a Russian or Caucasian shashka sword and a Turkish yatagan. You can see the ears and also the form of the handle resembles closely the shashka. So this is a mix between those two, and also here is another one. This one has the blade that looks like a modern machete blade for some reason, and it has these teeth closer to the tip, but also the handle looks like that of a shashka sword and also of that of a yatagan. So since the Armenians lived in Russia, Persia, and Turkey, including the Caucasian mountains, and a lot of Armenians were weaponsmith, I think they just introduced different kind of weapons outside of their areas. Let's say they introduced kinjals to Persians, and they introduced shashka style swords to Turkish, and also yatagan style swords to Caucasus, somewhat, something like that. So basically I tried to find out if this is true, so I just kept researching online, and this is what I found. This is a pair, as claimed by a seller, that was bought in an estate in Massachusetts somewhere, and the seller was selling them as a pair, and they both have the same maker's mark. So one of them is a kinjal or a kama, as they call it in Caucasus, but it has a really large and long blade, and the other one is the Qaddara, and it has the handle with 3 rivets, and also the fullers are there, and the maker mark is where it's supposed to be, but this maker's mark has Armenian scripts inside it, and so no doubt that it is made by an Armenian weaponsmith for an Armenian person. That's why it has the Armenian script on it. So that's what I learned from all my research, and I'll continue now with the restoration of the blade. So for my restoration, I decided to go with this design simply because this is very easy to make, since I don't have any workshop, and the only power tool that I used during this restoration is the drill, and these half spheres as rivet heads would be very easy. And also this handle is made from buffalo horn, which is easy to find and easy to work from what I hear. This is the other side of it, so I decided to go with this design, and for that I bought these handle blanks on eBay, and I just bought 4 pieces just in case I mess up some of them. So this is buffalo horn. The size is 6 inches by 1.5 inch, which is exactly what I needed. And I also bought these earrings online, and these are made from silver, and they have this brass wire around them. So I decided to go with silver and brass because these are the materials that were used by the masters back in the day, and they're very universal for these kind of handles. So I bought these earrings very cheap online. They were $15 or something, and these are made from silver, and they have the brass wire going around it. A funny thing is, when I bought these earrings, my girlfriend saw them first and she decided it's for her, and I had a big explaining to do when I tried to explain that it's not for her. So my advice, if you're buying any female jewelry online for any of your projects, make sure to tell your girlfriend or wife beforehand, because otherwise there'll be a long explaining to do if you didn't tell them, if you didn't let them know upfront. And I'm going to cut these clamps at the end, and just this will be the semi-spheres for my handle, and also for the middle rivet head. As I noticed in all of the photos that I saw, the middle one is different from these two, because it either differs in form or shape or size, so somehow it's different. And when I was looking online what to buy, I came to this silver um, button. They claimed it's for wallets or belts you can use for whatever. And I really liked it. It's a little bit smaller than my semicircles, and it has a different shape on it. And it's 925 sterling silver, and it has a cross on it, which some would say is not proper for an Islamic weapon, but I say who cares. I like it and it looks good, so I'm gonna use this one for my handle. Also, I bought these rivets. These are called knife makers rivets. I like these ones because these ones will go one into another instead of just me hammering the ends into shape, because with my rivet heads I won't be able to do that, because that semicircles and the button are going to be on one side of the rivet, and if I hammer it, I'll just smash them. So these ones are easier to work with and they're really good. So I bought 10 pairs of these just in case. And also I bought this brass list, which will be the insert for my handle. As you've noticed in the photos, most handles had some kind of either file work or some kind of coved gary on the side of the handle, on the blade. Mine doesn't have anything, but I didn't even want to do some file work on mine because I'm not gonna alter the blade in any way. But there is this technique when they put a brass list and they do a file work on the brass list and they put it under the handle material, and it looks really cool. So I bought this brass list for that purpose, and this is what I'm gonna start first. So I cut it into shape using these scissors. This is metal working scissors. They'll cut through any kind of metal. And I just put my handle and made an outline and just cut it to the shape and then filed it using little files. And also I did the file work on the sides. I just filed notches and on both of them using these little files that I had, and that's it. I'll show you how it looks after it's done, and I put both of them together and filed them together, so I'll have a symmetrical file work on both sides, even though they're going to be divided by the blade handle, but still I like the symmetry in this thing. I also soldered the rivet to my rivet heads. These are the earrings. I cut the clamps, as I said, and I filed the back of it and just soldered them together. And I used a simple torch. I didn't think this torch would do the work, but it did fine, and it was really easy. Just put my rivets on the rivet heads and use the little silver solder, and it worked like a charm. So I also soldered this part for the middle rivet, and this one was a little bit tricky because it had a bolt in it, and first I tried to solder without the bolt and I couldn't do it because the hole was too big for it to hold and the traction point was not enough. So I soldered the bolt in it first, and then I soldered the rivet on the bolt head, which I ground a little bit. And this is how supposedly it would look like. I put all of them together and it looks neat. So it's time for the horn handles. So I did the simple outline and made the holes that would match on the buffalo horn handle blank. And this is what I got after the first day of work. 2 brass handle pieces and 3 rivets with the heads soldered on them, and 2 buffalo horn blanks with the outlines and the holes already done. And I'm just making sure that everything is matching, and I put everything together and put the rivets through, because this is really important step. You don't want to start cutting your handle blanks and then finding out they don't match. So this way, just making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. I also marked the handle blanks by scratching them because I didn't want the markers to be wiped off when I was working on it and just lose my outline. So I just did a little bit scratching, and for that I tightened it with the bolts so it will be exactly where I want it. And this is how my marker, permanent marker and scratching looks like. I also marked the brass lists with an X in this one and a 0 on the other one, because these differ a little bit in their shape, so one side is different than the other. I didn't want to mix them at the end when I'm done. So this is how they look, and it's time to start cutting it. So I put them in a vise, and first I tried to grind them using my file, and after a couple of strokes I figured that it's gonna be very hard to do that, and it's gonna be very time consuming, so I decided to cut them with this little saw that I have, which has really fine teeth, and this worked. It went through the bone like a knife through butter without any complications. And for deeper parts I just made a V shape like this first and then cut using my saw, and it was not a problem. I was probably done with both of them in like 10-15 minutes. Just did the simple shape and just made sure that I don't cut very close to my outline, because I wanted to leave a space for me to work with the file and just to make sure that everything is done properly. So just always leave some space between your cuts and the actual outlines, not to ruin the handles. And then I ground these handles using a file. This one has very big teeth, and the important thing to remember when you're working with this kind of file is don't use a lot of force when you're working, because then you would leave I call them scratch marks on the other side, because it will just break instead of filing them. It will just rip them. And then you can use a different file with a smaller teeth like this one and just finish the filing process. For that I put these two pieces together so everything will be symmetrical and they will align properly when installed on the blade. This is what I'm done, and I'm just measuring again with a brass list, brass pieces, and together with the handle. It's time to put them together. I decided to use a JB weld to attach the brass pieces to the handle. Originally there was some kind of adhesive used for the same purpose, and I think using a JB weld is the best option, even though the original Dagger of course wouldn't have JB weld, but if the ancients knew about JB weld, I'm sure they would use this one instead of anything else. I didn't want to go and find out what kind of adhesive they used to attach the handles to the blade on the first place, but the purpose of that is to prevent any water or dirt going under the handle and ruining the blade from there. So just putting JB weld on the handle piece, making sure that I put it exactly where the handle is gonna go. And this one is a quick set, so it's gonna be set in 5 minutes and it's going to be cured in 4 hours. I attached the brass pieces using some 8x32 bolts and nuts, and to hold them in place very tight, and just leave it there for 4 hours till it will cure. And here you can see the file work, how it's gonna look on the handle, and it looks neat. Right now you can see all of it, but I'm pretty sure when I put the handles on it, it will look really good. In the meantime, I took my handle and made notches around the holes for the rivet. As you remember, I soldered the rivet heads on the rivets, and the rivets, they have this flat part on one end, and so I wanted them to go flush with my handle. So I made the notches on both of them, and this is how they're gonna look, all flush, and they're not gonna protrude from the surface. And now is the time for sanding. So I took a really coarse sandpaper and sanded the whole thing all over just to get rid of any scratches, marks. After that I took a finer sandpaper and just worked it till I couldn't see any big lines or any scratches on the handle at all. And as I said, these buffalo horns are really easy to work with. It's easy to buff them by hand. I used some buffing compound and put it on a leather belt and just worked it till I could get the handles really shiny. And after that I just put everything together and carefully hammered my rivets in, and just put some softer material on the heads of the rivets so I don't smash them when I'm trying to hammer this in, and it looks good. And I put a little bit JB weld in between the buffalo horn and brass, and also I put a little bit of JB weld where the rivets went in. Everything will be very sturdy and nothing will move. This is how the final product looked, and you can see the file work on the side. It looks really neat and beautiful, and it has brass and silver and buffalo horn, which are the original materials used by the masters who made the sword, and it looks really good. And also what I found out after I was done, this middle rivet head, which doesn't serve any purpose really and is just protruding where your palm should go, the reason for that is in the heat of a battle, when you're wearing a glove, you always want to make sure that your edge is striking the enemy, especially if you have a single edge. So this middle rivet head would press against your palm and always let you know which direction is your edge, so you can just, without even worrying about it, you can just strike your enemy and use the sharp edge to kill, so to say. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the Turkish Riyatagan restoration video coming up next.